I shouldn't have said her name out loud. Even now, it feels dangerous to let it linger on my tongue. But that afternoon, standing in the hallway with the smell of fresh paint and dust hanging in the air, I said it anyway, too softly, too carefully, like I was testing how close I could step before the floor gave way beneath me. She turned her head, and for a second, I thought she wouldn't answer. Her name belonged to someone older, someone who carried herself with the kind of composure you only earn from years of holding back too much. She was in her 40s, my neighbor, the woman who had lived across from me for months before we ever spoke. I was 23, just starting to piece my life together. She was already established, already certain, already untouchable. But then the pipes in her kitchen burst. That was the excuse. My hands, my tools, my nervous offer to help. She could have called a plumber, of course. Instead, she let me kneel on her floor, shoulders brushing against her legs whenever I shifted beneath the sink. The space was too small. The silence was worse. "You don't have to do this," she said. Her voice was low, even, like she was afraid someone else might overhear, though the walls around us were quiet. "I don't mind." My hand slipped, the wrench clattering too loudly against the pipe. I cursed under my breath, embarrassed. She crouched beside me, and for the first time we were at the same level. Her perfume was faint, something floral, but worn down after hours of being busy. I pretended to focus on the pipe, but my eyes betrayed me. I noticed the way her hair had come loose from its clip, how her sleeve slipped back to reveal the fine lines on her wrist. "You're too young to be wasting your weekend fixing an old woman's problems," she said. "You don't seem old to me." The words came out sharper than I meant, and I swallowed them too late. Her lips pressed together, hiding something, either a smile or a warning. Couldn't tell. We worked like that for an hour, our words circling the thing neither of us named. She asked about my classes, my late nights, the noisy friends that sometimes came by. I asked nothing in return, though I wanted to. Instead, I stole glances when she wasn't looking. At the way her fingers curled around the counter's edge, at the faint crease between her brows that deepened whenever I was too slow to answer. When the water finally flowed again, steady and strong, I should have left. That's what I told myself. Just pack up, thank her for the coffee she'd offered, and step out the door like nothing had happened. But I didn't. I stayed in the kitchen, leaning against the counter while she washed her hands. She didn't ask me to go either. She just dried her palms on a towel and turned, her back resting against the sink as though she were bracing herself. "You should stop coming over," she said quietly. "People will talk." The words hung between us, heavier than the dripping sound of the faucet. I laughed softly, though it wasn't funny. "Do you really mean that?" Her eyes met mine then, direct, unwavering, like she was daring me not to look away. "We should stop," she repeated, her voice firmer this time. But she didn't move. I stepped closer, close enough that the towel in her hand brushed against my wrist. My pulse was loud in my ears, but I forced my voice steady. "Only if you really mean it." Her fingers tightened on the fabric. Just once. And then, softer than the water still running behind her, she whispered, "I shouldn't be doing this." I swallowed hard, my answer already rising, reckless and certain. "Neither should I." The faucet still dripped behind her, a steady rhythm that marked the silence neither of us dared to break. I should have gathered my tools, said thanks, and walked out. That would have been the sensible thing, the safe thing. But nothing about the way she was looking at me felt safe. She crossed her arms, towel still clenched in one hand. "You're too young to get tangled in someone else's mess." The words stung more than I expected. Maybe because I already knew she wasn't talking about the pipes anymore. "I didn't come here for that," I said quickly, before I could regret it. Her eyes narrowed, searching my face like she was trying to catch the lie. She had this way of holding a pause, like she'd mastered the art of waiting someone out until they confessed what they were really thinking. I didn't confess. Not out loud. But in my head, I was already saying too much. I'd noticed the ring missing from her hand the very first time she opened the door to me. Not a pale mark of absence, not even the ghost of a tan line. Just emptiness, like the space had been bare for a long time. Still, there was a weight in the air whenever she mentioned the word we, as if part of her still lived in an old argument. Now, standing there, she pressed the towel into her palm until her knuckles whitened. I just got out of something complicated. You shouldn't mistake this. I almost laughed at the irony. Mistake what? She hadn't touched me, hadn't invited me closer, hadn't given me anything to mistake. And yet here I was, memorizing the way the kitchen lights softened the lines at the corners of her eyes, the way her hair framed her face when she tilted her head just slightly to the left. You don't owe me explanations, I murmured, though part of me wanted every one of them. Her expression flickered, relief or maybe annoyance. Couldn't tell. But her shoulders loosened, and for the first time, she seemed less composed. Not younger, not softer exactly, just human. That look almost broke me. I busied myself with wiping down the counter, though it didn't need it. My hands shook, so I gripped the rag too tightly, trying to stop them. She watched me for a long while. Then, slowly, she stepped closer. Sit, she said, nodding toward the chair at the small kitchen table. It wasn't a request. I hesitated, half afraid the chair itself might betray me if I stayed too long. But I obeyed, lowering myself into the seat while she leaned against the counter, one hand resting flat on the surface beside me. You've helped enough for one day, she said. The sentence should have ended there. But her voice softened, almost a whisper. You don't have to leave right away. My chest tightened. Her hand slid just slightly across the counter until it brushed against my forearm. It was barely a touch, more suggestion than contact, but it lit me up like a fuse waiting for flame. I should have said something simple. Thanks for the coffee. I'll head out now. Instead, the words caught at the back of my throat, trembling on the edge of being spoken. Something I knew I shouldn't admit. Her hand lingered against my arm longer than it should have. Long enough for me to wonder if she even realized she was still touching me. My chest ached with the effort of pretending I didn't notice, but every nerve in my skin betrayed me. I began, but the words faltered. I didn't know if I meant leave or stay. She pulled her hand back slowly, folding it into the towel again. That tiny retreat left the air between us charged, unbearable. Coffee, she said finally, like it was a safe word. She moved toward the cupboard, but her motions were slower than usual, deliberate, as if she wanted to stretch the moment. I pressed my palms against my knees, forcing myself to breathe evenly. Don't say too much. Don't ruin this. But then she asked, almost casually, do you always help women you barely know with their leaks and broken things? Her back was to me, but I could hear the smile in her voice. Only the ones who keep me awake at night, I said before I could stop myself. The silence that followed nearly made me choke. She didn't laugh. She didn't turn around. She just stood there with the cupboard door open, fingers gripping the handle like she was bracing herself. Finally, she spoke, quiet, careful. You shouldn't say things like that. I know. I did know. But knowing and stopping were two different things. She set the mugs on the counter, her movements sharper now, like she was punishing herself for letting the moment stretch. I wanted to apologize, to say I was only joking, but the truth hung too heavy in the air to take back. Then, just as she poured hot water into the cups, her phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize. She froze, her hand hovering above the steam. You can answer, I said, my voice hoarse. She glanced at me, then at the phone again. For a moment I thought she might, but instead, she pressed the side button and silenced it, face unreadable. That single act rattled me more than the touch had. Whoever it was, she didn't want them intruding here. With me. The kitchen felt smaller now, almost claustrophobic. I tried to lean back, to carve some distance, but my chair scraped too loudly against the floor. She flinched at the sound. "I should go," I whispered. She turned then, finally meeting my eyes. Her expression was a mix of defiance and something I couldn't name. "You don't have to," she said, steady. Her hand slid one of the mugs across the counter toward me. Our fingers brushed as I took it. Neither of us pulled away this time. I swallowed, my throat dry despite the heat of the cup. I knew I should put it down, make an excuse, leave before I lost all sense. But instead, I asked the one question I shouldn't. "Do you want me to stay?" The question lingered in the air, heavier than steam rising from our cups. "Do you want me to stay?" I shouldn't have asked it, but once spoken, there was no way to reel it back. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she sat opposite me, folding her hands around her mug, eyes fixed on the dark swirl inside. The silence stretched, and every second that passed felt like a verdict waiting to fall. "You shouldn't put me in that position," she said at last, voice steady but low. "I know." My hands tightened around the mug, scalding heat biting my palms. "But you didn't say no." Her eyes flicked up, sharp, startled, like she hadn't expected me to call it out. A muscle in her jaw twitched, and for the first time since I'd met her, she looked cornered. "I've already made enough mistakes," she murmured. "I don't need another one." The words stung, though she hadn't said you outright. Still, I couldn't help it. Is that what I'd be? A mistake? Her breath caught, and she looked away, toward the half-open blinds, spilling a stripe of streetlight across the counter. The faint hum of the refrigerator filled the room, the only sound between us. I should have let it drop. I should have stood up, left with some dignity. But something inside me pushed harder, reckless. "You don't let people close, do you?" I said softly. "You keep everything locked up, neat, safe. But I see it. The way your hands shake when you're pretending to be fine. The way you look like you're about to say something, then swallow it instead." Her head snapped back toward me, eyes flashing. For a moment, I thought she might yell, or worse, throw me out. But instead, her expression broke, cracked right down the middle, exposing something raw. "You have no idea what it's cost me to keep things neat," she whispered. The room seemed to shrink, pulling us together whether we wanted it or not. My chest tightened, torn between apology and desire. I reached out, almost without thinking, my fingers grazing the back of her hand where it rested on the table. She didn't pull away. The touch was small, almost nothing, but it felt like a breach in the wall she'd spent years building. Her lips parted, trembling as if she might say something, then closed again. We sat there, hands brushing, breaths uneven, the night pressing in around us. Finally, she spoke, her voice unsteady but clear. "If I let you stay, what happens then?" The silence after was deafening. I couldn't answer, not without crossing a line neither of us could undo. So I just looked at her, held her gaze, and let the question burn between us, unspoken promises tangled in the air. Her question still burned in the air. "If I let you stay, what happens then?" When the sharp knock at the door shattered everything, she flinched. I pulled my hand back instinctively, guilt rushing into the space between us like cold air. Her shoulders stiffened, and without a word, she stood and crossed the room. The knock came again, firmer this time. "Who is it?" she asked, her voice calm but a little too controlled. "It's me," a man's voice replied, low, older, familiar in the way that made my stomach twist. She froze with her hand on the doorknob. For a second, I thought she wouldn't open it. Then she did, just enough for me to see his outline. A man in his late 40s, maybe early 50s, with tired eyes and a presence that filled the hall. "I forgot some things," he said, his voice rough with disuse. "I didn't think you'd be—" His eyes flicked past her shoulder, straight to me. I looked down at my hands, gripping the mug like it was the only anchor I had. She stepped into the doorway, blocking most of his view, her voice firm. "You should have called first." "I did," he said quietly. Her phone silenced on the counter. My chest tightened. He didn't push his way in, didn't raise his voice. He just nodded, slow and deliberate. "I'll come back tomorrow." She shut the door before I could read more from his face. The click of the lock echoed too loudly in the small apartment. For a moment, neither of us moved. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on the kitchen like another presence. Finally, I found my voice. "That was him, wasn't it?" Her lips parted, but she didn't answer. Not right away. She set her hand flat against the doorframe, her shoulders rising and falling with a heavy breath. "My ex-husband," she said at last. The words landed like stones. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the grain of the wooden table, trying to keep my voice steady. "You didn't tell me. What would it have changed?" she asked, turning toward me. There was no challenge in her tone, just exhaustion. "He doesn't live here anymore. He doesn't belong here." But the truth was already out. The phone call she ignored. The knock at the door. The way his eyes had flicked to me and known immediately what I was doing there. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "It changes that I wasn't supposed to be here at all." She stepped closer, her expression fierce, desperate. "No, changes nothing. Don't let it." Her hand gripped my wrist, warm and trembling. The contact was too real, too immediate, grounding me even as my instincts screamed to pull away. "I asked you to stay," she whispered, voice breaking just enough to betray her. "And I meant it." The silence after that was unbearable, because now the danger wasn't just imagined. It was standing outside her door, waiting to come back tomorrow. Her hand was still on my wrist, her grip tight enough that I could feel her pulse racing against my skin. "I meant it," she repeated, softer this time, almost like she was afraid the words might collapse if she said them too loudly. I stared at her, at the lines of exhaustion around her eyes, at the way her jaw trembled though she was trying so hard to stay composed. My chest felt too small, too fragile to hold everything crashing inside me. "You don't have to pretend with me," I said quietly. "Not about him. Not about this." Her eyes flicked to the table, to the mug still steaming, then back to me. "You think this is easy? That I can just—" She broke off, pressing her lips together, shaking her head. "You're young. You don't understand what happens when you let someone too close. They take pieces of you, and when they go, those pieces don't come back." The words cut sharper than she intended, I think, because I saw it then, the grief, the hollow ache beneath her practiced strength. She wasn't pushing me away because she didn't want me. She was terrified of losing again. I leaned forward, resting my hand gently over hers. This time she didn't flinch. "I can't promise I won't hurt you," I admitted. "I can't promise I'll know what I'm doing. But I can promise I won't lie about what I feel." Her eyes widened, and for the first time, she looked at me without armor. Vulnerable. Human. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but no words came. The silence stretched, long enough for me to wonder if I'd gone too far, if I'd exposed too much. Then, finally, she whispered, "You make it sound so simple." "Maybe it is," I said. Something broke then. Not between us, but inside the wall she'd built. Her shoulders sank. Her hands slid into mine fully, her fingers twining with mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You shouldn't have come here," she murmured, but the fight was gone from her voice. "I know," I said, and then softer, "but I'm glad I did." We sat there in the low light, hands clasped across the table, everything unsaid finally spilling into the quiet between us. No declarations, no promises of forever, just a truth neither of us could deny anymore. Her thumb brushed over my knuckles once, tentative but certain. "If this goes wrong, it'll go wrong." I cut in, a small smile tugging at my lips despite the heaviness in my chest. "That's life. But it doesn't mean we don't try. She exhaled, shaky but lighter somehow, as if a weight had finally slipped off her shoulders. And in that moment, messy, uncertain, raw, I knew we'd already chosen. The kitchen felt different the next morning. Not brighter, not lighter, just different. The air no longer held the sharpness of unsaid things. Instead, it felt like something had settled, fragile but real, between us. We hadn't crossed every line, but we'd stopped pretending there wasn't one. She sat at the table across from me, hair pulled back loosely, a chipped mug between her palms. No makeup, no armor, just herself. I couldn't stop watching her, memorizing the details I knew I might forget if I wasn't careful. The tired crease at the corner of her mouth, the way she tapped the rim of her mug absent-mindedly, the sound of her breath when she thought she was alone in her head. "You should go before he comes back," she said finally, her eyes on the window. "I know." Neither of us moved. Her ex-husband's shadow still lingered in the space. The knock at the door, the phone she silenced, the way she had nearly lost control when I asked if I should stay. All of it was still there, hanging like a weight between us. And yet, she hadn't asked me not to come back. "You were right," she said after a long pause. "I don't let people close. I thought it was safer that way, cleaner. But all it did was make me smaller." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "You're not small." Her lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but not far from it. Maybe not anymore. The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It was softer, warmer, as if the air itself had changed its mind. She reached across the table, her hand brushing mine. Not hesitant now, not accidental. "A choice. Whatever this is," she whispered. "Don't make me regret it." "I won't," I said. The words came easy, not because they were certain, but because they were true in that moment. And maybe that was enough. I left before noon, the world outside too bright, the street too ordinary after a night that felt anything but. But as I closed her door behind me, I carried with me the image of her sitting there at the table, unguarded for once, letting herself be seen. Things weren't perfect. They wouldn't be. She still had her past, I still had my youth, and the world would talk if it ever found out. But none of that erased what happened between us. Two people who shouldn't have collided, yet somehow did. Sometimes the risk is the only thing that makes something worth it. And as I walked away, I realized I wasn't thinking about mistakes anymore. I was thinking about beginnings.